For decades, Ron Howard has been a beloved face and voice in Hollywood, from childhood stardom to directing some of the most iconic films of our time. But behind the smiles, the awards, and the spotlight, a quiet tragedy has unfolded. Now, at 71, the pain he's carried is finally coming to light, and it's far more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. What he's endured in silence will leave you stunned, and it might just change the way you see him forever. Ron Howard wasn't just born into a family, he was born into a story. From the very beginning, his life was wrapped in scripts, stage lights, and the soft hum of cameras. He came into the world on March 1, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma, but there wasn't much time to grow up like other kids. His parents, Rance and Jean, were both actors, always chasing the next job, the next audition. They didn't have much money, but they had dreams. Big ones. And before Ron could even form full sentences, he was being guided into the world of entertainment. By the time he was 18 months old, Ron was already on film sets. Imagine that. Barely walking, and already being filmed for commercials, TV shows, little parts that required a cute face and a calm presence. But behind the scenes, it wasn't all warm smiles. The lights were harsh, the hours were long, and Ron, a toddler, was learning early that life wasn't measured in playdates or bedtime stories. It was measured in camera angles and retakes. When the family moved to California, it wasn't just a new beginning. It was a decision to live closer to the heart of the industry. For Ron, this meant his childhood took place on sound stages instead of playgrounds. He did his schoolwork in trailers behind studios, surrounded not by classmates, but by grown-ups smoking, swearing, and rushing to set up scenes. The air always seemed to carry the scent of cigarettes and stress. He was learning his times tables while crew members dragged cables and shouted over lighting issues. Then came Opie Taylor. Just 6 years old, Ron became a household name on The Andy Griffith Show. America loved him. They saw him as the sweet, red-haired boy of Mayberry, a symbol of innocence and warmth. But for Ron, behind the smile was a quiet sadness. His life was being watched by millions, but few saw the loneliness that came with it. There were no schoolyards, no friends after class, just scripts to memorize and scenes to shoot. Kids at school didn't understand him. They teased him, turned Opie into cruel rhymes that stuck. He remembers once wetting his pants from the stress of it all. Behind the fame was a boy who just wanted to feel normal, but even in those early painful years, something inside Ron was forming, something strong. He didn't let the spotlight break him. It shaped him, gave him a toughness hidden beneath that soft-spoken nature. He learned to endure, to carry pain quietly. And that strength? It would carry him through everything still to come. There was a time when Ron Howard couldn't walk into a room without hearing someone call him Opie or Richie. For years, those names followed him everywhere, on set, on the street, even in moments when he just wanted to be himself. He had grown up in the spotlight, practically raised by cameras. To the world, he was the red-headed boy from The Andy Griffith Show, and later, the clean-cut teenager from Happy Days. But what the world didn't know was that Ron Howard had dreams far beyond being the boy next door forever. By his early 20s, Ron started to feel like he was trapped in a role he hadn't chosen. Acting had always been part of his life, almost like breathing. It came naturally, but deep down, he wasn't sure if it was what he wanted anymore. There was a quiet discomfort growing inside him, a hunger for more, for something deeper. He started to realize that while acting gave him a face in front of the world, it didn't give him a voice behind the story. And that's what he wanted most of all, to tell the story himself. The turning point didn't come with fireworks. It came in late nights, spent studying other directors on set, asking questions no one expected from a young actor. He watched how scenes were blocked, how lighting was chosen, how music shaped emotion. He wasn't just showing up for his own lines. He was soaking in every detail behind the curtain, not because anyone asked him to, but because something inside him wouldn't let go of the curiosity. He started writing. Not full scripts at first, just ideas, scenes, character notes. He filled notebooks with thoughts about camera angles, dialogue choices, pacing. He wasn't just dreaming, he was preparing. It was as if every quiet moment on set, every hour he spent as a child listening to adults argue about tone and timing, was leading him here. But making the shift from actor to director wasn't easy. Hollywood didn't want to see Ron Howard in any other light. He was too familiar, too safe. They saw him as a reliable face for sitcoms, not someone capable of shaping films from behind the camera. He was that kid from TV, and no one seemed ready to take him seriously in a new role. But Ron, steady as ever, didn't shout to be heard. He simply worked harder. In 1982, he got his chance. Night Shift wasn't a massive blockbuster. It didn't come with a big budget or overwhelming expectations, but it was a start. Ron directed it with everything he had. Long days, endless revisions, rehearsals that stretched into the night. He was determined to prove, not to Hollywood but to himself, that he could do it. And he did. Night Shift earned solid reviews and decent numbers, but more importantly, it opened the door to something greater. With Splash in 1984, Ron took another leap. People thought it was just a quirky mermaid movie, but he saw the heart in it, the vulnerability, the magic beneath the comedy. He poured himself into it, battling doubts and second-guessing at every turn. But when the film became a hit, Hollywood finally took notice. Maybe Ron Howard wasn't just that kid after all. From there, everything started to shift. He wasn't chasing roles anymore. He was building worlds. He tackled Cocoon, then Parenthood, each film showing more of his voice. His directing style wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it was deeply human. He focused on emotion, on connection, on the quiet moments that made characters feel real, and that authenticity spoke volumes. Then came Apollo 13. That film was a test in every sense of the word. The pressure, the technical challenges, the emotional weight. It was the kind of project that could break someone. Ron didn't sleep much during that time. He obsessed over every detail, pushed himself harder than ever before. He even passed out from exhaustion during filming, but he got back up. He always did. When Apollo 13 soared both critically and financially, it felt like the world finally caught up to what Ron had seen in himself for years. He wasn't just reinventing his career, he was building a legacy. And that legacy wasn't about fame, it was about storytelling. In 2001, he directed A Beautiful Mind, a film that nearly tore him apart emotionally. The pressure of telling John Nash's story with honesty and sensitivity weighed heavy on him. Every scene was like walking a tightrope, but he never looked away from the hard parts. He never took shortcuts. And when the film won 4 Oscars, including Best Director, Ron didn't stand on that stage as the former child star. He stood there as an artist who had earned every second of that moment. But reinvention isn't a one-time thing. It's not something you do and then coast forever. Ron kept evolving. He founded Imagine Entertainment, created new paths for young filmmakers, mentored others quietly, without fanfare. He failed too. Some films didn't land, some projects lost millions. But he kept showing up. He kept telling stories. That's who he was. Even after decades in the industry, Ron never stopped learning. He stayed humble, always listening, always adapting. He didn't chase headlines. He chased honesty. That's what made his reinvention so powerful. It wasn't about escaping who he used to be. It was about becoming more of who he truly was. And now, looking back, his journey doesn't feel like 2 separate lives. One as an actor, one as a director. It feels like a long, winding story of a boy who was given a spotlight too soon and figured out how to turn that spotlight into something meaningful. Ron Howard didn't walk away from the past. He carried it, quietly and with grace, and turned it into something bigger than anyone ever expected. Not just fame, but purpose. Not just success, but impact. Ron Howard's life has always looked steady from the outside. Calm, collected, reliable. He was the kid who grew up on set and somehow never fell off the rails. The teenager who turned into a responsible young man, then into one of Hollywood's most respected directors. No scandals, no public breakdowns, no mess. But what most people never saw were the personal earthquakes, those silent, shaking moments that cracked the ground beneath him when no one was watching. Ron grew up in a family that was built on loyalty. His father, Rance Howard, wasn't just a working actor. He was Ron's quiet guide, the person who showed him how to walk through the strange world of Hollywood without getting lost. His mom, Jean, was warm and sharp, with a kind of steady wisdom that kept the family grounded even when cameras were flashing. They didn't raise Ron to be famous. They raised him to be good. And through every stage of his life, that lesson stuck. But no family, no matter how close, no matter how loving, is safe from time. In 2000, Ron lost his mother, Jean Spiegel. Howard had always been a soft presence in his life, not loud, not demanding, just steady. Her passing hit him in a way that caught him off guard. It wasn't just grief, it was a disorienting sense that the foundation had shifted. The woman who had quietly held so many pieces of the family together was suddenly gone, and the space she left behind felt far too wide and quiet. Then, 16 years later, his father passed too. Rance Howard, the man who had always been Ron's example of discipline and grace, died at age 89. Ron shared the news with the public, but the words didn't really capture what it meant to lose him. "He stood by me every step of the way," Ron said. And that wasn't a figure of speech. His dad had been there, not just cheering him on, but working with him, acting in small roles in many of Ron's films, offering advice without ever pushing. When Rance was gone, it wasn't just losing a parent. It was losing a co-pilot, a creative partner, and a moral compass. But it wasn't just his parents that shaped these emotional tremors. Over the years, Ron faced countless moments that threatened to unravel the quiet life he had worked so hard to protect. The demands of his career were enormous. While he was directing major films, working impossible hours, and managing a company, he was also trying to be a present husband and father. And sometimes, that balance teetered on the edge. He met his wife Cheryl when they were just teenagers. She wasn't a celebrity. She didn't want the spotlight. She just loved Ron. Before the fame, before the money, before the pressure. They married young, and in a world where relationships collapse under the weight of fame, theirs somehow lasted. Through every red carpet, every missed dinner, every sleepless night editing a film, Cheryl was there. Still, love doesn't protect you from struggle. There were tough years, times when the weight of responsibility got heavy. Ron was stretched thin, sometimes emotionally distant, trying to carry more than he should have alone. And yet, Cheryl stayed. She wasn't just his wife. She was his anchor. She called him out when he got too lost in work. She reminded him who he was when the world only saw what he did. Their marriage didn't survive on luck. It survived on loyalty. Real hard-earned loyalty. Their 4 kids grew up watching their dad not just as a director, but as a man constantly juggling the cost of his ambition with the needs of his family. Ron always tried to show up, to be at their games, their plays, their milestones. But he also knew there were times he failed. Times he was too distracted, times he missed things that mattered, and those regrets stayed with him. Not as shame, but as quiet truths he carried, reminders that even the most dedicated parent can't do everything. When one of his daughters struggled with anxiety during her teen years, it shook Ron. He had always thought that if he worked hard enough, provided enough, created a peaceful home, he could shield his family from pain. But life doesn't work like that. He had to learn that love wasn't about control. It was about presence, about listening, about simply sitting in the dark with someone and not trying to fix it. And that changed him. As a father, as a husband, as a man. Over the years, Ron became more private, not because he was hiding, but because he was protecting something sacred. Fame had given him a platform, but it had also taken pieces of his time, his energy, his quiet. So he learned to draw a line. He shared his work with the world, but kept his heart close. Friends said he was the same man off camera as he was on. Humble, warm, soft-spoken. The kind of person who remembered birthdays, who showed up at funerals, who called just to check in. But personal earthquakes don't stop with age. They just change shape. In recent years, Ron's faced new kinds of loss. Friends, mentors, colleagues who shaped his career passing away one by one. He's felt the slow ache of watching the generation that raised him fade. And through all of it, he's held on to the values that got him here: loyalty, love, and quiet strength. He doesn't grieve loudly. He doesn't post emotional monologues, but he feels it deeply. Every loss becomes a thread in the fabric of who he is. Now, at 71, Ron isn't chasing legacy. He's living it. Not in awards or headlines, but in the way he shows up for his family. In the films he chooses to make, in the stories he tells that always seem to have a little more heart than most. The world may still see him as a Hollywood icon, but those who know him best just see a man who's held steady through every quake, sometimes shaking, sometimes breaking, but always standing, always loving, always choosing to stay grounded. No matter how hard the ground tries to shift beneath him, Ron Howard never aimed to be the loudest person in the room. He wasn't chasing flash or headlines. From the start, he seemed to understand something that takes most people a lifetime to learn. Real success isn't about noise, it's about what stays standing when the lights go out. And now, in the later chapters of his life, that's exactly what he's left with. Not a spotlight, not a show, but something deeper. A life rebuilt, one shaped by love, grounded in legacy, and marked by quiet, powerful triumph. He's 71 now. His hair is white, his pace a little slower, but his spirit is still sharp. He walks into a room and people instantly recognize him, not just because of his long career, but because of the calm that follows him. There's something about Ron Howard that makes you want to take a breath, to listen, to trust. Maybe it's because he's never stopped being the same honest, humble kid he was back on the Andy Griffith Show. Or maybe it's because life has tested him in 1,000 quiet ways, and he's walked through every fire without losing his kindness. There's a peace to him now. It wasn't always there. For decades, Ron lived in the middle of chaos. Long shoot days, tight deadlines, constant expectations. Directing big films isn't just creative. It's pressure. It's responsibility. It's being the one who has to answer for everything. And Ron carried that weight for years without letting it harden him. He worked with legends, directed blockbusters, won awards. But he always made sure he came home the same man he was when he left. That home, that steady ground, has always been his real masterpiece. It's not a mansion made for magazine covers. It's not filled with expensive art or celebrity chaos. It's just warm, lived in, real. He and his wife Cheryl built it together over decades, piece by piece, with patience and trust. She's not just his partner in love, she's his partner in life. The one who saw him before the world did, who stayed through every late-night edit, every missed holiday, every hard year. They've raised 4 children, and in a world where fame often swallows families whole, the Howards have stayed intact. Ron is close to his kids. He's proud of them, not because they're successful, but because they're kind. That's always been his real measure. He didn't want his kids to chase fame. He wanted them to chase purpose, integrity, joy. And now, watching them grow into adults with lives of their own, he says that's the thing he's proudest of. Not the movies, not the awards, but that his children still call, still visit, still lean on him when they need to. That matters more than any headline. But that doesn't mean he's stopped working. Ron still directs, still tells stories, but now he chooses them more carefully. He doesn't run toward noise or spectacle. He's drawn to meaning, to stories with heart, to projects that remind people of what matters: family, hope, resilience. He's not trying to impress anymore. He's trying to connect. And you can feel that shift in everything he creates. There's also a generosity to him that often goes unnoticed. Ron doesn't brag about his philanthropy. He doesn't need his name on every check he writes, but behind the scenes, he gives to education, to the arts, to medical research, to causes that align with his quiet belief that the world gets better when people help each other. He's not trying to change the world with noise. He's just trying to leave it better than he found it. Loss has shaped him just as much as success. The death of his parents hit hard. They were his foundation. Their values are still the compass he uses to navigate life. When he lost his mother and then his father, it felt like the end of something sacred. But instead of crumbling, he carried them with him in every decision, every quiet moment, every time he passed those lessons down to his own kids. Legacy isn't about what you leave behind, it's what you carry forward. And Ron does that every day. There's also been illness, private struggles that never made headlines. Times when he had to sit quietly with fear, times when the people he loved most were hurting, and he couldn't fix it. He's walked through the halls of hospitals just like the rest of us, sat in waiting rooms, whispered prayers, felt helpless, and through it all, he's never let bitterness take root. He still believes in the good, still believes that love is stronger than pain. Now, his days are simpler. He wakes up early, makes coffee, spends time with Cheryl, takes long walks, reads more than he used to, calls his kids just to hear their voices, checks in on old friends, and when he's not on set, he's often in his garden or in his home studio, tinkering with something, a script, a shot list, a new idea that's been tugging at his imagination. There's a quiet rhythm to his life now. It's not flashy, it's not viral, but it's rich, deep, earned, the kind of life that doesn't demand attention, but deserves respect. Ron Howard may not be the most talked about celebrity in the world today. He doesn't chase trends. He doesn't stir drama, but in an industry built on pretending, He's always been real. In a world that often rewards ego, he's stayed humble. And in a culture obsessed with fast fame, he's built something that lasts. That's what triumph really looks like. Not applause, not money, not a shelf full of awards, but a life rebuilt after loss. A love that still stands. A legacy that doesn't need to be shouted to be felt. At 71, Ron Howard doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. He's done what he came here to do, and he's still doing it. With grace, with love, and with the kind of quiet power that doesn't fade. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest kind of triumph of all.